Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Greetings, feely humans. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and I'm here to bring you the birds and the bees. I'm here to tell you, sit down, son, sit down, daughter. The birds and the bees, they are in the trees. I don't know. I'm making up songs. Anyways, this is episode 31, and it's a special episode because I sat down with three of my friends, Jessica, Jason, and Jeanne, where we talked about the birds and the bees, and that conversation that we had potentially, or not had, in my case, that conversation, how that impacted our mental health, identity, and sexuality. Like I said, this was an impromptu collaboration. I thought it would be interesting, and it was. We also talk about D.H. Lawrence, sticky t-shirts. You probably know what that means in this context. Condoms, birds and the bees cartoons, growing up with a Catholic nun, and much more. So it's a good one. It's fun. It's interesting. There is some explicit talk of sex, including briefly sexual assault, and then, of course, masturbation. So if you're hesitant about those things or a little sensitive to those, I wanted you to be aware. I guess the last thing I'll say before we get into it is thank you for being here. And if you are enjoying the show, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave You, Me, Empathy a rating and review. 5 stars is my fave number, but be honest, and I just really like to see more ratings and reviews, and I'd love to read them here on the podcast. And I just love to see this podcast just see more people. See more people? That doesn't make sense, Known. I liked this podcast to be in more ear holes and to impact more people and to maybe inspire others to have conversations about mental health openly with their friends and family. So please go on over there to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and leave You, Me, Empathy a rating and review, please, and thank you very much. I love you. Okay. Please enjoy this episode 31, on the birds and the bees with Jessica, Jason, and Jeanne. You and me, empathy. La la la, la 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 la. You, me, empathy. Yeah. La la la.
A little bit about me. First of all, I'm on your same page when it comes to sexuality kind of affecting both the rest of my life from the point in which it began, as well as my mental health. So when you brought it up, I was like, wow, that's a great, subject and spark for conversation, because ultimately, the more that we deny about ourselves, I feel like repression of sexuality is responsible for a lot of fetishized behavior, which can lead to shame, which can lead to trying to hide it, can actually lead to illegal and aggressive behavior. And I feel like the more open we are with ourselves and our children, the less likely repression's going to end up turning into aggression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm just kind of a podcast fangirl. I was just on Twitter and just following all my favorite podcasts, and that's kind of what I listen to all day in the car and at work. And, then one day someone reached out and said, hey, do you want to do this? And I said, sure. And then the other day, like Mike Denniston reached out and said, hey, do you want to talk about movies? And I was like, well, you realize I'm no professional.
Yeah.
So I try not to like, I don't know, specifically engage and try to do something. But it's like, if anyone ever wants to do anything, I am fully game. So yeah, whatever you want to do.
Oh, that's nice. Well, let's just dive into it then. So I will just preface this by saying,
I love you, Mom.
I love you too, sweetie. Go on.
That's sweet.
I'm on a call, remember? Here, one kiss and then keep watching Big Hero 6. Come here, baby. Sorry, no.
No, it's okay.
Come here. Give me kisses. Can I have a kiss, please? Mwah. All right. Go watch your movie. Close my door, please.
It's my dad.
No, he just looks like your dad. Can you shut the door, please? Thank you. Love you. All right, sorry.
No, it's okay. What if I just like deny you kissing your son?
You're like, no, it's
That
not okay.
It is
Just
not
hang up.
allowed.
It's not all right.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, that's sweet. So let's just dive into it. So I wanted to talk about the birds and the bees, and I guess I'll just maybe ask you what your sort of integration with, what sex was, as a kid. Like, I will just preface by saying, for me, I didn't have that conversation with my parents. It was never broached, and there was an impact there. But I'm curious to hear from you, Jessica, what your experience with that was.
Well, can I go ahead and respond by prefacing like possible trigger warning?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I grew up with very, very religious parents, both of whom were fairly repressed themselves. So they wanted to keep me and my little brother shielded from the world as much as possible. I wasn't allowed to watch live action television or movies until I was 13 years old because they thought that cartoons would just, I don't know, always be okay. Little did they know about anime. Anyway.
Like metal, heavy metal?
Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah, heavy metal, Full Metal Alchemist. Because of that, one of the first movies I remember seeing is Watership Down, which is horrifyingly violent.
Oh, God, yeah.
But it's still one of my favorite properties ever. I'm digressing. The point is that they did not want to discuss sex. They didn't want me to have sex education, which was offered in my school, but I was you had the option to be given the very basic talk in junior high or actually go in depth for a special class. And my parents only gave me the approval to get the very basic talk. So I basically understood that a penis goes in a vagina and that's what sex is.
Sure.
And that's all I knew. The rest of it, as far as they were concerned, was if anyone ever touches you, go to the police. If you have sex before you're married, you're going straight to hell.
Yeah.
And it's so basically, as far as my understanding, it was either someone's touching you before you're married and that's illegal, which equaled to me that I wouldn't want them touching me. So
right.
I got a little
naturally
confused there. Yeah.
What was your parents' religion?
Presbyterian. So,
okay.
Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically what ended up happening is, of course, I had boyfriends, and I didn't understand that if I wanted them to pursue any level of sexuality, I basically had no line between where yes or no was because I wasn't given the very basic information. It was either you're doing something sinful and horrible and you're burning in hell, or go to the police.
Yeah, you're not given these proper sort of tools to figure out, is this good? Is this bad? How to assess it. You're just met with hellfire and all these concepts you can't really wrap your brain around as a teenager.
Exactly. And therefore, my first sexual encounter was not a consensual one. I didn't understand exactly what was happening because I didn't have the language or the logistics to understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It's something I deal with on a pretty regular basis. It's, I don't know, he's the entire reason I've moved to Ohio. You know what I mean? So it's my life was on one track and then something really, I don't know, significant happened and then just completely pushed me onto a different track. So I feel like I'm living the life of someone that I wasn't meant to live. which is a little difficult to try to get to a place of happiness. I'm slowly getting there, though.
That's good.
Yeah. But, so because of that, I'm trying to give my kids, who are 9 years old and 4 years old, like as much information and perspective as I possibly can. So like, my 9-year-old, he's about time for that. Like, it's about time for that talk for him.
Okay.
Like, it's getting younger and younger nowadays. When it was back in our day, I think you and I are similarly aged. Like, I would say like middle school was kind of the time to talk about it. And nowadays kids are doing crazy stuff in like later elementary school. So you really need to get there a little bit early to make sure that nothing damaging happens, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. The access to media, I think, is probably part of that. I'm 30. How old am I? I'm 30. I'll be 37 in July. Mm-hmm. So, the internet was new, and, access to porn and those things. Like, my porn was, women's magazines, right? Like Sears catalog.
Oh, no. Some friends of mine stole their older brother's Playboy. And that was my first exposure ever. And I was maybe 12? 12 or 13. We're like, ooh, look at that.
But the point is that like, there's, obviously this is not new and has, it's been said before many times, but the access to media that children have at such a young age is just astounding. And so as a parent, I'd imagine you have to sort of think about that.
Oh, yeah. And you can even police it in your own home, but you never know what, they have access to electronics at school now. So a kid could just, similarly to like sneaking in a Playboy or something in your backpack, they can just bring in their tablet that doesn't have parental controls and just show your kids whatever they want, really.
Right.
And again, I'm not against, because I feel, I'm trying to do all the research right now, so my brain's a bit muddled, but there are like the Freudian steps to sexuality, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And children start to receive those, not urges, but like feelings fairly early on. And I feel like denying them what's happening is contradictory to a healthy lifestyle. So I try to, anytime that my kid sees something or hears something that's, sexual, like let's say that he's watching a show with me and two people are in bed, you know what I mean? Like with, tastefully with the blanket up or something. And he has questions. Like I'll answer the questions honestly, always. Or if somebody makes a "that's what she said" joke, like, "Why is that funny, Mom?" Like, well, let me tell you why Michael Scott is the king of comedy. But like right now, my 4-year-old is starting to kiss me on the lips a little bit longer than is appropriate. And I'm trying to kind of explain, like, I love you and your expression of love is valid. But at this point, you're making me uncomfortable and I don't want you to make anybody else uncomfortable. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to kind of toe that line.
That's got to be so difficult.
It is.
Yeah. How many kids do you have?
I have 2.
Okay.
The 4-year-old's in here looking at me goofy. Can you go back and watch your movie, please?
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to my friend Noan.
Oh.
Oh, can you close the door, please? Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Close the door, please. Thank you. So, speaking of exposing in regard to media, and I know I'm getting a bit off topic, but I've been very careful to try to make sure that my oldest is all forms of romance and sexuality. So making sure that they have access to same-sex couples and the fact that that's romantic, transgender, non-binary. I want to make sure that my kids understand that all forms of love are acceptable as long as they're done consensually and it's what's right for you, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it's tough, there's not a lot of material out there for kids to actually appreciate and understand that all forms of love are good as long as they're positive for you and the other person. It's almost always man and woman.
Right.
So it's tough.
Yeah,
But there, it's out there. So
it is, but yeah, it's slowly coming a bit more into sort of the zeitgeist. But yeah, it's we still got a lot of work to do. I want to see a vast wall of picture books with non-binary individuals and trans women and men and homosexual relationships. Like, I want to see all of that. There are some of them because I'm actually a big fan of picture books, but they're we got a lot of headway to make on that front for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Like I got to take the opportunity to speak to my oldest son because we watched The Wedding Singer last night.
Okay.
And I got to, speak to him about George and Alexis Arquette and pronouns and, preferred pronouns and that sort of thing. And it was a good opportunity. So like those are kind of the things that I reach for. It's like I'll show the example of Susan and Carol's relationship in Friends and the fact that they get married and it's really beautiful. You know what I mean? It's like it's fairly kid friendly, and or like Cam and Modern Family. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are like kid friendly examples where you can kind of show them like, okay, this is accepted love and everything's okay. So whatever you decide to be, whatever you are, is okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's all I'm just trying to get to is I don't want either of my kids to ever feel shame for who they are.
And that's so great. Like, I'm curious how did you react to like what your parents were, what, the environment you were in as a kid and the, your parents, like, did you feel that sort of stifling? What did you feel?
Oh yeah. I have everlasting anxiety, more than likely due to the household that I was brought up in. Some people respond differently, and I could feel everything being held inside and choked. You know what I mean? So like when my parents were talking to me about like, did anybody ever touch you? Blah, 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 blah. Like my face would just get totally hot and my blood pressure would rise and my, heart would just start racing. And it was just never a comfortable feeling. So I began to associate anything sexual with equally shame and excitement, like shame, pain, and excitement.
Sure.
And
natural.
That combination of things has not done wonders for my sex life.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And yeah, so
what,
go ahead.
Like, what did you fear your parents' response would be?
Oh, I thought that they would, like, if I had sex before I was married, I thought that they would disown me and basically throw me out onto the street. And I was a very devout Christian at the time too, so I thought that God would do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, when I did have that non-consensual encounter, it was with a trusted boyfriend at the time. So it wasn't, it wasn't like go to the police. It was, you'll burn in hell forever if you do this.
Mm-hmm.
So like when it happened, I told no one because I thought that I was just burning in hell forever. I didn't understand. Like I knew that I was doing something I didn't want to do, but I didn't understand that it was illegal because of the way sex was presented to me.
It's so damaging. It's so damaging.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking of, like my heart is breaking for you. And there's so many of us that had that experience with sexuality. And, I remember, being a boy and having the urges to masturbate as we all do.
Sure.
And feeling so much shame because the common sort of thread and the sort of emphasis I got from the people in my life was that was evil and that was a sin. And if I did it, I would go to hell. Yeah. I feel like that's child abuse, to be honest.
It is.
Yeah.
Like it honestly is, and that's something that, you and I were kind of making reference to children having sexual feelings and urges at an early age. I remember my oldest had a period of time in which he would just kind of, I don't know, it wasn't sexual really, but he would kind of touch himself. Like sure. While we were in the middle of doing things, I'd be like reading him a book or something. And I remember having to stop myself because your immediate reaction, because of how you were conditioned, is to go, oh my God, wrong. No, 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 don't do that. And I had to just kind of take a breath and very calmly say, hey, sweetheart, if you feel like you need to touch yourself in that manner, I'm really happy to leave the room. You can just let me know and you can do whatever you like. Just don't do that in front of other people because it can be seen as aggressive and some people don't want to receive that information. And he kind of immediately shut down. He was like, I'm not doing anything. And then he did it again. I was like, honey, would you like me to leave? And he goes, yeah. I was like, okay, if you have any questions, I'm just going to be over there and I won't come back in until you come out and talk to me. So like, that's like the only way that I could kind of handle it. And I'm like totally flushed and embarrassed for myself.
Sure.
But I don't ever want him to have that feeling. Like, unless he's doing something very legally specifically wrong, I don't want him to ever feel embarrassment or shame when it comes to his sexuality, because my God, that is such an anvil. That is such a weight to carry around for the rest of your life.
It is such a weight. But even with a beautiful, relationship that you have and the honesty and the openness, and that's such a beautiful thing. Even with that, children are going to, it's such a foreign thing. It's just like, what is it? What is this thing? What am I feeling? Like there's so many emotions. It's already like such a burden. So to have on top of that, parental units sort of validating your shame is so problematic.
It's very problematic, and similarly, I'm trying to make sure that I equal everything out. I'm just trying to like not give anything any emphasis. Like when I talk to my oldest at the end of the day, I'm just like, so do you have a crush on anyone? Like I'll say anyone. I'll specify like, do you have a crush on a girl? Do you have a crush on a boy? What's going on? I try to like make sure that they're both even toned so I don't seem like I'm, freaking him out. But it's tough, it's really tough. Like when I was growing up, and it sounds like it's similar for you, it's not something that was discussed. And if it was discussed, there was a large amount of consequence and weight on it.
Right.
And I just don't, I feel like that's just a recipe for repression.
Yeah, the weight of it. It was always such a sex. Oh my gosh, this thing, this weight, this pressure. Like it took me a long time to have a healthy relationship with sexuality. Like it took me, it wasn't until like my 20s where I was like, confident sort of enough to like, sort of express my sexuality in a way that was healthy and about this mutually beautiful thing. Because for forever I was scared of it. I was worried about it. I, had shame and guilt, and, I have to credit my partner, Jessica, my Jessica,
who's awesome. Yes.
Who is awesome, for kind of helping me in that journey in a way, which is nice. But like, for the sort of quasi relationships I had before Jessica, I was kind of a mess. I didn't know how to do it. There was so much emotion wrapped up in it that made it difficult.
Oh, yeah. Like hearing you talk about that, I so relate to that. As a matter of fact, like I still don't really have a healthy relationship with my sexuality or my sex life. I've actually been celibate for it'll be 4 years in August.
Okay.
And that's by choice. And it's in large part because I don't feel like I've ever made good decisions. Like ever since that first bad encounter, I have always been, I've never been motivated accurately when it comes to sex.
I see.
You know what I mean? So I felt like I just needed a bit of a reset button.
Yeah.
And I'm just now finally starting to explore moving on and trying it in a healthier way.
Okay.
And even now it's terrifying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I just don't want to, I've done a lot of really hard work. It sounds like silly to call doing nothing hard work. But in terms of human sexuality, not engaging in it for over for almost 4 years is pretty hard work.
That's quite impressive.
Well, I don't know if I'd use impressive. It's just something that I needed to do.
Well,
you know
you
what I mean?
needed
Like,
to do it because it's impressive in the way that, like, from a self-care perspective, like, you recognize that you have some troubles in these areas and you want to sort of curtail that. You want to, like, put an end to that for a period of time where, while you sort of figure it out, right?
Yeah. I'm trying. But like I said, I'm finally starting to explore re-experiencing it. So we'll see. But that all goes back to that initial experience, which all goes back to being informed or not informed, as the case may be, by the talk that I did or did not have with my parents.
Right.
So it's like, it's in those formative years. And that's why when you and I were discussing the birds and the bees talk, it's like, I am so nervous about having that talk with my children because I want to make sure that they are as comfortable and understand as much of the logistics of everything as is humanly possible. And, there are so many schools of thought in, like, what you tell your kids, how you tell your kids. And my approach has always been that of honesty. And it's gotten me shamed by several other parents.
That's just unfortunate.
Yeah. Like, I remember at one point, my youngest went to a party and I went to go pick him up. And one of the parents was like, I just wanted to let you know that he pointed out my daughter and said that she had a vagina. And I was like, I mean, okay, what's the context of this?
Right.
And apparently, like, we had the penis, the vagina talk. I've always used technical terms. Both of the kids understand. I'm a single mother. They barge in on me in the bathroom all the time.
Yeah.
So both of the kids understand, what menstruation is. I don't want to scare them if they, like, walk in and see that kind of a scene and don't understand what's going on. And apparently he just got in this thing where he was going out, pointing everybody out, saying, like, well, you have a penis because you're a boy and you have a vagina because you're a girl.
I feel like there's, I mean, he's accurately, he's being he's like a researcher. He's a little scientist. That's what he is.
He is a little scientist. And I just kind of explained, I was like, well, I'm really sorry. Did he stop when you asked him to stop? She's like, well, yeah, but I mean, he shouldn't be saying those things. It's like, I mean, why though?
Why?
Like, he's 4. 4-year-olds say weird stuff all the time and inappropriate stuff all the time. We were in the store and he pointed out someone elderly and said, hey, look, she's old. Yeah. Like, he's 4. He has no filter.
That's what 4-year-olds do.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, I'm so sorry, but, like, does your daughter know that she has a vagina? Did he confuse her because she wasn't aware? I don't understand really what the problem is. Like, I get that you don't want to be talking about private parts in public. It's an embarrassing and inappropriate thing to do. But again, 4-year-olds need to receive a little bit of, leeway when it comes to pointing out obvious inappropriate things.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Anyway, so yeah, that was my experience. Is I basically had no talk. It was like, you're waiting until you get married, or it's a horrible sin and you'll burn in hell, or you need to go to the police because it's something that you don't want to happen.
Right.
And then that kind of translated to the rest of my life, to a non-consensual encounter, to trying to make up for that throughout my 20s, to at this point being celibate for almost 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the talk is an important thing.
It is an important thing. And I what I hear from you is that, honesty and openness and, a more progressive mindset and, respecting, these little creatures we produce, as little humans who have a capacity for understanding and reason, but also finding a delicate balance with, understanding their development and when that chat should be. But, like, I totally agree with you. I'm not a father, but I have had the birds and the bees talk with Scooby. And he didn't understand. But
he didn't understand.
No,
really?
He didn't understand. Maybe I'll try the dogs
you guys had
and the dogs.
ESP thing happening.
Right. No, but like, I mean, I think if I had a child, I mean, and this is how I operate. I think let's take it out of that context and just put it broadly. I think honesty and openness and sort of a shame-free. Nothing should be off limits, right? Like we need to understand intent. We need to understand the context with which we speak about these things, but also understand that sex is a very natural thing that we all have and experience, if we choose to. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I was chatting.
There shouldn't, sorry.
No, I was just
there
going to say.
shouldn't be any shame associated. Is all I was going to say. Like, I think we agree with that.
Yeah. There's just so much shame and taboo around certain topics. I mean, we talk about the stigma of mental illness. There's so much shame in that, like even self-shame. And we talk about this on the show a lot. And it's so heartbreaking. And I long for the future with which we can talk to anyone about really anything, and there's no societal shame sort of connected to that, from religion or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was talking to Elizabeth Lame for an upcoming episode of You Me Empathy, and she was talking about dealing with grief as a parent. She has 2 kids herself, and I was asking her, she was like, she's basically saying the same thing, that like she wants to talk to her kids about her grief, and both her parents died, and which is horrible and tragic, and she also experienced a sexual assault that kind of like made the news earlier this year. But how do you want your kids to recognize that grief is a valid emotion that everyone experiences when they experience a trauma or they're sad or what have you, a loss. And that's a natural experience, but at what point does that happen? And we were just talking about like the balance of that, and that's tricky.
It is. It's really tricky. I think the one thing that I've kind of always relied on is letting your kids tell you when they're ready for something. Mm-hmm. Like they won't come straight out and say something. Like they won't come out. Like my oldest isn't going to walk into my room one day and say, "Mom, I'm ready to talk about sex." You know what I mean? But like,
right.
I know he's ready, for instance, because he saw an episode of Futurama and desperately wants to continue watching it. Now, Futurama is a lot more sexualized than The Simpsons is, and other, slightly adult animation and shows. And I kind of explained to him, I was like, so you want to keep watching this? Well, this deals a lot with sex and it makes a lot of sex jokes. So if you're going to continue watching it, then I'd like to have the talk with you. I'd like to talk to you about sex before you continue watching it, so you understand what is a joke, what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's not expected, that sort of thing. And he was like, oh, okay.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
It's like, so when he wants to watch Futurama again, that'll be his way of telling me. If he says, Mom, can I watch Futurama? That'll be the time that I like turn all the electronics off and sit him down and have a nice conversation with him, because he knows.
Yeah.
That if he wants to watch it again, then he's got to have that conversation.
And he also knows, and I think this is a really important part of it, he also knows that you are, as a parent, as, someone in their lives, open to that and warming and welcome, right?
I hope I am. I hope you can't tell how nervous I am. But for certain, he's tried to talk to his father about it before. He and I obviously are not together. I'm a single mother. And he won't talk to him about it. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that I can really discuss with him. Like, how dare you just have the talk with our kid? Because if he's uncomfortable, then he's going to pass all of his uncomfortable bias onto my child.
Right.
And I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I've brought that up with him a couple of times. Like, if you don't want me to talk to you about it, would you feel better talking to a man about it? Or who do you want to talk to about it? Mm-hmm. I just want to make it as comfortable as a scenario for him as possible.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And that's all you can ask for, really. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm curious about your sort of journey and what the work that, you had mentioned the work, and your celibacy, and that is work. I'm wondering if there's other work you've done in terms of sort of coming to terms with your sexuality and whether it's therapy or whatever mode of therapy that you choose. But I'm wondering, if there's other work you've done, self-work, etc.
Kind of, as you are very aware and you've discussed before on the show. Hi, buddy. Sorry, kids are starting to get a little anxious, but I am not one of those people that has the type of insurance that can actually seek out therapy on a regular basis, although I very certainly need it. So I actually, about a year into my celibacy, I decided that I would kind of go back to the point in which the encounter took place, which was when I was 13 years old, and basically just kind of work and grow from there. Because I was so distracted by my confusion and my depression and my anger that I don't even remember high school during that period of time. You know what I mean? Like, I remember going out with, I'm pansexual, and I remember going out with boys and women both, and not just being terrified. I didn't know if I was terrified because I was scared, or if I was nervous, or if I was self-conscious, but I don't ever remember having a positive romantic experience. I've had maybe 2 positive romantic experiences in my life, both of which came after feeling comfortable with someone after being terrified. Mm-hmm. I've never been able to just go on a date and have a good time.
Yeah.
I've never been able to have a first sexual encounter and just have a good time. It's just not in my DNA. Well, I guess my DNA was changed. We'll never know. Mm-hmm. But so basically what I did is I went back and I started kind of like reading the books in high school that are on the curriculum that I didn't ever really pay attention to. I started immersing myself in the music of the time, and I just started kind of progressing, and I journaled and I wrote about it. So I basically allowed myself to feel like the juvenile I never truly grew out of, because I feel like I was pretty stunted there.
Sure. So
that's kind of what I've been doing. It's just very slowly trying to simulate growing up. Mm-hmm. Because I've always, ever since that happened, I've always felt 13. Like, I'm a mother of 2, and I've got a full-time job, and I just bought my first house, and I still feel like I'm 13 years old. You know what I mean? It's like, It's just, it's tough. It's something that I have to pay attention to every day. And that's one of the reasons I really enjoy your podcast, is because, talking about mental health and self-care and all that stuff, it's like, you really do need to take care of yourself in these times, because there are so many people who are kind of outspokenly against you. Now, in this age of social media, we're so aware of how against you people can be. Whereas instead, you used to just come across someone randomly racist and give them a horrible look and then leave. Right. And that was like maybe a once in a month occurrence. Now it's like, you see people arguing on social media and getting mad and tweeting this and Facebooking that. And it's like, my God, what is wrong with you people? Like, just let people live.
I don't know how they find the energy.
Yeah, nor do I.
Well, anyway, I could talk with you for hours, but I know your kids are getting antsy, and I completely understand, and I appreciate your story and your time. And I would actually love to have you on for a full interview if you're open to it sometime.
Oh, absolutely. That would be honestly amazing. It would be fantastic to just talk to somebody about mental health. Again, I don't have the resources to seek therapy on a regular basis, and like listening to you and Paul Gilmartin, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, those are kind of my only outlets. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That and watching 6 Feet Under over and over again.
I do need to rewatch that show. Well, I'm very honored and touched by that, and I appreciate it. And I would love to chat with you on the podcast, but I would love to just chat anytime, honestly. Like, I always sort of offer that to people. I like having these conversations. I think they're helpful for everyone involved. So anytime, really.
Well, thanks, no, and same. I really enjoy engaging on social media. I'm a fan of the podcast. I think you and Jessica are wonderful people. So thank you so much for, having a conversation with me.
I guess we'll just start here. I'm here with Jason. Hello, Jason.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Very well, too. Thank you.
You're welcome. This is one of 3 installments of a chat with friends on whether or not we had the birds and the bees talk and how that impacted us and our mental health. And I'm with Jason to explore that. Just as a reminder for listeners, I never had that chat with my parents, and I think and then growing up in a religious household that sort of impacted me. But I'm curious. First, I guess the question is, did you have that conversation with your parents, Jason?
Yes, I did. I had it with both my mom and my dad at a variety of occasions. Actually, it wasn't just the once.
Okay.
It came up in conversation a little bit, here and there. But we did have one. It was my sister and I. We were sat down, and I tweeted this to you the other day. We were sat down in the living room when we were living in Baie-Comeau, which is 500 kilometers away from where I live now, small town. And my mom had a video cassette called "Where Did I Come From?" And it was a cartoon, and we sat down and watched that together. It was about 22 minutes, and I still remember the cartoon. And that's it. We had a conversation about it after. I remember I was sitting across from my sister. Parents were at the both ends of the table, and then we basically kind of talked about it. I don't remember like the whole conversation, but I remember it being kind of relaxed. I think my sister and I were a little giggly about it, because I think I was.
How old were you?
12 and my 12 and my sister was 10, if I'm not mistaken. It was roughly around those ages, and so we were like, But it's a fond memory of mine because it's a very strange video. I remember that much.
That's good. I mean, it's good to. I mean, your parents sound very open, and to have that memory, that conversation with your parents about this stuff, and have it be a fond memory. That's a really positive thing.
Yeah.
What kinds of
really
things
cool.
did you glean from this video?
Oh man. You know what? I was actually going to bring my mom on the show today. I didn't tell you. She couldn't make it, and I was going to bring her on so that she could actually sit down and talk to us.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
I know. My mom, she had a meeting this afternoon, sadly, and she's like, I would have loved to do that, because when my mom got the video, and she had, most of the people that went to my school worked with my mother as well, and so when my mom had, she had ordered this video through the mail, she actually lent it to all the other parents of the kids that were in my class. So everyone had that video. I don't know if my mom still has it, but it was a really interesting thing because mom was the woman with the sex tape, like the one that talked about the birds and the bees. And that was really, really great. But I don't know. I don't remember your question. I just had to tell you that tidbit that I wanted my mom on. What did you ask? Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. That's amazing. And I would love to have your mom on anytime. But the question was like, do you remember like what you specifically kind of the things you learned watching that video?
It was really, how could I put it? It was a fun video because it wasn't necessarily explicit. It was told through the eyes of a rubber ducky, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
When you watch it, because what they did is they had a man and a woman sitting in a tub, and then what they would do is they would explore the body parts. They would show the comparison between the breasts on a woman and the flat chest of a man, and then after that they would show the genitalia. And every time like they were trying to show something, basically they were the adults were in a bubble bath, and so the rubber ducky would blow the bubbles off the body part that they want to explain. And so I remember that, and I got to be honest. I remember when I saw the breasts, I was like, wow, that is cool. And it was just a drawing. And
Sure.
I remember watching it a couple of times after that to see what boobs looked like. And I caught myself, my mom caught me drawing boobs for a while. Is the complete opposite of like the super bad moment where the guy's just drawing dicks. I was
Sure.
just drawing boobs. And so that's kind of interesting to I have a fondness for breasts, if I say, and I think it actually comes from that video because they looked great. They were drawn super well. And I remember the penis was a very shocking revelation because as a 12-year-old, your dick doesn't look the way it does when you're in your 30s.
Right.
Well, hopefully anyway. And so
That's your Benjamin Button.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. It goes the other way around. But when I remember when the rubber ducky blew the bubbles off the man's penis, I was like, oh, I have something to look forward to, which is kind of interesting. But at the same time, when I rewatched the video just last week, I was like, that's a pretty crooked dick. They didn't draw that well. They really spent a lot of time on the breasts, but they didn't do too good job on the penis.
Well, why would you? The penis is really disgusting and ugly.
It is kind of a weird shape, and I agree with you 100%. I always said, like, I understand why, girls find girls attractive. I don't know why they're with guys.
But we're two heterosexual men, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So the takeaway was the way that they showed the sex was basically the worst possible way to have sex is basically completely under the sheets. And there's like a lot of giggling going on, and it looked like there was a tickling competition. And so then after that, they explained that, the penis goes inside the vagina. And then when the man has an ejaculation, then you saw like it was a race. The sperm itself, when it shot out of the penis, it became like a swimming pool.
Wow.
If I remember correctly. And it was the fastest one would get there, and essentially that's where the baby was made. And it was like a dance, I think, if I'm not mistaken. When the sperm met the egg, they would have a little dance as well that would kind of mimic what was going on in the bed between the man and the woman. And so then it would kind of fertilize, and then that's where we came. Like she would, I think, for a part of the video as well, they showed the pregnancy and all that. I don't remember if the man was around, but it was really concise for 22 minutes. So I remember that very clearly. I remember the race. I remember being surprised by the outcome of the race. I was like, what if there's a tie? It was kind of interesting for that.
That's so fast. That's a lot of information to relay. And well, one, it's a video intended for children to learn about this stuff. Like that's a lot of like pretty detailed information. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing. I think that's a positive thing.
Oh, it's a great cartoon, to be honest, because if you're 10 and 11, I mean, cartoons are still pretty much your life at that point. And they're putting it in a way that was, how can I put it? I think there's a healthy manner. There's a lot less awkwardness if you're just sitting down at the table with your parents and, everyone's looking away or down because there's some sort of like everyone's shy or something like that. And there's a lot of giggling. I think that the video really kind of broke the ice when it comes to the conversations that we could have, but after that, I mean, it just became awkward. Not immediately after the video, but a couple years down the road when, you're having masturbation kind of, discussions with your dad, it just becomes, that was weird. I remember like dad asking me about, like, so are you feeling all right? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah. Well, if ever you need to talk about anything, you can talk to me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
That's really cool. That's my dad's way of really, extending an olive branch to a certain extent, just saying, I'm here for you. You don't always have to talk to mom.
It wasn't the olive branch he extended. He extended a crusty sock.
Well, see, that's the thing. I didn't have crusty socks came later. Mine was the worst because my mom would occasionally go into my room to clean. And I didn't want that. I never wanted that. That's a no-no, especially when you're a teenager. Moms out there who are listening to this, do not go into your teenager's room. Let him deal with it. He's learning how to wash clothes at the same time. And so I remember my mom I walked into my room, my bed was made, everything was kind of picked up, but this is going to sound fucking retarded, but anyway, I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to use that word either. This is going to sound stupid, but anyway, this is part of my life. I had this t-shirt that I used to use all the time. And it was a t-shirt from Nova Scotia, dark blue. I remember it. I had the blue nose on it, written Nova Scotia. And I used to kind of masturbate and use that to finish off. I didn't want to use any Kleenexes or anything like that. And I used to stuff that shirt kind of in a place where I knew no one could get, so, but it turns out my mom decided to clean my room.
Where'd you stuff it?
It was kind of behind the bed. There was kind of a crack where, the base of the bed, there was a little space between the base of the bed and the wall. And the way that the base of the bed went is that the base itself and the platform on which the mattress rested, there was a little space there between the wall. And so I used to kind of put my t-shirt there. And I came in my room and I noticed there was a Kleenex box on my night table. And then I just kind of lost my mind. I was like, oh no,
she knows. The t-shirt.
And then my mom came into my room and she says, I cleaned your room. I found the t-shirt.
Oh, goodness.
And I said, what did you do with it? Well, she says, I didn't wash it, Jason. I threw it out. It was fucking disgusting. And so I'm like, I'm so sorry, Mom. She says, just use the Kleenexes, Jason. Okay.
That's amazing. Like, I am so in awe of your experience and kind of envious because I never had these conversations with my family. The concept of masturbation was, if I did it, my dick would fall off and I would burn in hell. Like that was sort of the predominant messaging. Cool. And so there was a lot of shame and guilt when it came to these natural urges that I had. I'm curious, like, you clearly had this like very open and I think very healthy and honest environment to grow up and learn about this stuff. Like how did that then sort of impact your own sort of experience with sex and sexuality?
I don't know, man. I think as much confidence as I'd have around my parents with that type of thing, it wasn't necessarily something we'd talk about in the open. So you walk to the breakfast table and it's like, I just really needed to get it out this morning. It's not something you wanted to chat about with your parents.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So getting caught, there was an amount of like, I won't say shame, but I mean, it's like, shit.
Yeah.
I got caught doing something that I didn't want, and you don't really know what the hell's going on with your body at that point. You just know it feels good and it's fun.
Yeah.
But that didn't translate too well outside of like, the home. I wasn't really confident with girls or anything like that. And so when it came to, sex on the outside, just trying to, how could I put it, meet someone and have some sort of fun. I didn't particularly have interesting experiences because I didn't know that, girls might have been interested in me or anything like that. So it took a while for me to kind of get comfortable and know what the hell I was doing with a girl.
Sure.
And so I don't know if it really helped, to be honest. I think when it helped, the conversations with my parents didn't necessarily help me have interesting relationships with women, but they helped me understand a little bit more about myself and what I was going through.
Yeah.
That these changes were normal, and so those are the benefits, of the conversations with the parents in this case.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that totally makes sense. What, did you have any conversations later, like when you were starting to maybe become sexually active, like with your father or, your mother about, safe sex or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot of them. That was the dick burning for me. It's like, wear a condom or else it might fall off, something like that. But, they were always very adamant that, just be responsible. First of all is treat the girls with respect, obviously. Don't force them to do anything and all that. So consent was always a big thing in the house. You don't want to pressure anybody into doing anything. And if I wasn't ready myself, then I was allowed to say that as well. So that was really cool.
It's very
With
empowering.
regards to, yeah. And with regards to protection, yeah, man, it was always the case. I remember my dad. I think, was it dad or mom? I remember I'd been with a girlfriend for a while, and I think I had to go ask my mom for condoms because I was too shy to go buy them myself at the drugstore, and she did. I think she did. I don't know if it's mom or dad. I have to ask them to make sure. But I remember specifically that I was there, and she put them in her purse. Yeah, I think it was mom. I was there. She asked me which ones I wanted because I had gone in to scope the place out first and just be like,
wow, this
the
sounds
ones on the
so
wall in the gray
uncomfortable.
box. Yeah, but at the same time, I didn't kind of want to do it myself because it's a small town. You don't know if the girl behind the counter is someone you actually go to school with or something like that. So it's kind of, but mom made it comfortable. I remember mom making it comfortable. Dad didn't have any issues with it either, but I remember them buying me my first box of condoms. So it wasn't a big deal, and it was just, I didn't talk to them about the fact that I wanted to do anything. It was more a precaution. She said, always bring at least one or two with you just to make sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I had them in my gym bag, if ever I went to play basketball or something like that. And, we were going out and after the shower and, I could call late at night and say, I'm not going to be coming home tonight. I'm going to be going over to my girlfriend's place and all that. And so at least they knew that if anything was going to happen, then, it would have been safe. They could trust me that way. And, I just didn't really want to have a kid at that age. So it was fine. I never really played with fire that much because they were adamant. It's like, do this, because you guys aren't responsible enough to have kids yet. And I was like, all right, cool. I agree with that.
That's amazing. How did that make you feel in terms of like your parents, supporting you in this way and being kind of, hey, you're a responsible human being, and like it feels like I'd imagine it probably felt empowering, as we said, but just like trusting and loving too, right?
You know what? In hindsight, yes, but as it's occurring, no.
Yeah.
To me, this is what all families go through, right? Because I'm not necessarily talking to my friends about this. I'm not talking to anybody else in my family. So I just assumed that this is how people handled these situations. You know what I mean? Obviously, like my mom had told me, and even my dad had told me, like our parents never told us anything. They'd just be like, you'll figure it out, or, oh, we don't talk about that stuff in this house, and, grandfather used to get angry when he saw tampon ads on TV, like, that's not meant for that place, and so sex, you can imagine him talking about that must have been some of the most uncomfortable things to go around. But yeah, so I don't know if it was empowering or anything like that. All I know is that it made me, I guess, a little bit more careful. But I only realize that now because I haven't necessarily talked to anybody. And now you've just mentioned that you hadn't had that conversation either. And so I'm like, holy shit, I thought everyone went through the same shit I went through. This is very surprising to me.
No, that's interesting. And it makes sense that you wouldn't have that insight, in the moment. What, I'm curious, like, so let's like fast forward a bit. As a father, have you had these conversations with your kids? I forget your kids' ages.
12 and 10. 12 and 11, actually. My daughter turned 11 recently. I haven't yet. And the funny thing is that doing this episode started stirring that up in my brain. And I was like, all right, what do I do? Do I show them the same video? It's really shitty now because, they're used to like How to Train Your Dragon animatics. But now, so I'm like, there's no CGI involved in what I'm going to show them. And at the same time, I figure, why the hell not? It's a very appropriate video. It shows you a lot of interesting things. It lasts 22 minutes. And if they have questions, we could continue talking about it. But I was driving my daughter to school this morning. And I said that I was coming on the show to do this, to talk about it. And I said, we haven't had that talk yet. I says, maybe we should have a talk about it. And then I kind of jokingly said, would you rather your mom talk to you about it? And she said, yeah, I think so. And I was like, oh, good. But I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that right now this is like, when you mentioned that you wanted to talk about it, it really started stirring in my brain. I'm going to have this conversation with my kids, and I have to have it sooner rather than later because my eldest daughter just went into high school. So hormones are going to be starting to really kick in. And so, I'm planning on doing it. I want to be a little bit more open-minded about it as well, the same way, handle it the way my parents did. But at the same time, now I kind of understand a little bit of the feeling that they have, in talking about this type of thing. And especially since like I have 2 daughters and guys are assholes. So I have to kind of be a little bit more vigilant in my opinion. But at the same time, I figure that they're both very responsible ladies already.
Yeah.
So I figure that maybe they'll be okay. But so I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to approach it yet. I don't want to sit around a table and be awkward about it because, I mean, if I put myself in their position, if I'm really, really open about it, they're just going to be even more weirded out by it. You know what I mean? So like, why is Dad talking to us about this like this? This is weird. Can we just go play Minecraft? I have no fucking idea what the hell's going on.
Do you worry about, maybe this is stepping over the line, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you worry about
Sure, man.
Just the level of access to sort of internet stuff kids have today? Like, do you envision a world where they've already sort of looked at stuff online that, sort of explains some of this in ways that may not be healthy, porn, etc.?
To be honest, I'm a little naive when it comes to what they've watched and stuff like that. I don't believe in censorship. I think that if there's a tremendous amount of information and in shock value. So if it scares them away from doing specific things, then fine, that's great. What I'm more worried about is the competitiveness in children now in schools when they have to one-up one another in order to perform in a certain way. I remember I have a friend who was a sex educator who had received questions such as, if I no longer want to be a virgin, do I have to do all 3 holes in one night? And I'm like, the fuck is that? And I said, how old was this kid? And she's 13. And I was like, Jesus Christ. Wow. That is insane, man. What kind of guy is pressuring her into doing this type of thing? What's the how can I put it? What's the want to completely lose, your virginity, and be able to walk into school and say, well, I did all 3, and then some, and now I'm completely in the game, and I was like, so I don't know where the badge of pride is yet with regards to whom my daughter, interacts with and stuff like that, because there's always the kids, the kids that want to be extra cool. So they're screwing everyone. They're doing all the drugs. They're staying out late. They're swearing at the teachers and all that stuff. And I try to remind my daughter that, those are the kids that, sadly, this is their time. And then after that, they're probably just going to, flame out, I guess. But I don't know. It is a little bit weird. I'm more concerned with the people than I am with the access to online information or anything like that. Because, online information you can kind of get rid of rather easily. But the influence of people on people, that's really hard to shake.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think, using your experience as a good lesson, you realize in retrospect that, that was sort of an open, honest, empowering atmosphere, and taking that experience and wanting to give that to your kids. I think that's a good thing. Yeah,
definitely. And I'm going to try to do my best with regards to that because, I think that I'm not a girl, so I don't know what it is or what they feel when it comes to relationships. I only know it from my perspective, and even
Yeah.
though I'm trying to come at it in a nice way. I try to like my mom said, always, treat a woman with respect and all that. I don't know how girls perceive guys at that age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always going to be from an outsider's perspective. So I'm hoping that, my girlfriend or even the kid's mother are going to have a little bit more insight, especially my girlfriend, maybe not the kid's mother so much. I know a little bit about her experiences, and I'm not too thrilled with her talking about them because she's the kind of person that kind of keeps everything all bottled in. They don't really talk. They just yell most of the time. So, but my girlfriend is very much in tune to how to talk to the kids and make them feel a little bit more comfortable with that. So I'm hoping that the conversation, if it's going to be like for the four of us, myself, the kids, and my girlfriend, I think that would be the safer environment in which I would want it to happen. And if I could let my girlfriend Leslie talk a little bit more so that she can explain what her experiences were as a woman, then I think that would be a little bit more comfortable for me, because that way I'd understand a little bit more where, how women have to deal with the onslaught of men that are going to be coming towards them.
Yeah. And comfortable for you, but it might be, as you are saying, it might be more comfortable.
Eye-opening, if you
Well, it might be more
you
comfortable
want,
for your daughters, to
That
sort
too,
of
yeah.
get a lot of that from your girlfriend. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hmm.
Well, I think that about does it, unless there's some specific sexual experiences you want to relay to me. I'm just kidding. Well,
anything's on the table, man. I don't care.
I know. No, I appreciate you sharing your story and your experiences. I don't have kids, but I'd imagine that I would be the type of father who would want to create an environment that is open and honest and, like you said, has no censorship and, treats them as, humans as opposed to what I had. And not saying like I wasn't treated like a human, but I there was just a lot of censorship and narrow-mindedness that I feel like can cause damage. So
I don't know if you've explained this. You probably explained this to the other listeners, but I'm not privy to any of this yet. So, I mean, how did you figure this stuff out? Did you did people get you magazines? I remember a guy getting me one once. Or did you were friends talking about it? Were there?
No, that's a good question. I haven't been asked yet. So, how did I learn? I think it was through friends. I think it was, I remember there was magazines from a friend's father. Like it was like a, it was like a Playboy magazine, that type of thing. I think there was some. I remember the early days of the internet, and somehow finding pictures of naked women. This download's going to take 6 hours, but I'm waiting for it. I'm going to wait for it, and it's going to be worth it. That type of stuff. But through all of those experiences and learn and seeing these images of naked women and stuff, I felt deep shame and guilt for it. I thought, oh man, I'm gonna go to hell. And then I would sort of, I grew up in a religious environment, so I would pray and sort of hope to God that I am actually not going to hell, So there was a lot of that. And then I think as a result of those experiences, it took me a long time to kind of have a healthy relationship with sexuality and sex and stuff. I feel, and honestly, I'm 36 now, and I still feel almost 37, and I still feel weird and sometimes sort of just weird about sex, and I think that's kind of a remnant of those experiences as a kid. So that's where I'm at.
Oh, but I mean, truth be told, I'm still weird about it too, man. I don't even know if that goes away. And we had very different experiences when it comes to that.
Yeah.
You know, most times I'm like, why do I feel this? Why do I feel the need? And then once it's done, I'm like, oh man, I fucked up again. You know what I mean? Why did I let this control me? You know, so it's always one of those things. And bringing up religion is always a fun one, because I remember when you have to go to your first communion, and then after that you go to confession and all that stuff. Then, but it was after not confession was in sixth grade, if I'm not mistaken, or is it secondary one?
So you're talking about Catholic confession?
Yeah, exactly. I remember having to go to church, and you know, when you're doing like all the, because I had to go to what they call so-called Sunday school as well. But it wasn't every Sunday. You know, it was just a question of like, you know, I was a baptized kid, so we had to go through the first communion and the other thing that comes after. I don't remember much of it. And I remember you had to go to see the priest and you had to confess, you know. And so I remember having to confess. I was like, well, I masturbate occasionally. And it was one of those things where you don't realize as a kid, because like I said, I'm a very naive individual. I see the best in people all the time.
Yeah.
And then I have to tell this priest, I could have lied. I could have told him I was reading a comic book in church. You know, it would have been so much simpler. But no, I had to kind of get it off. And it was one of those things where I thought I was going to go to hell, you know, as well, because of the religious instruction we had in school. But once my mom and dad told me, like, no, man, don't worry about that. Don't tell that priest anything. You know, I was like, oh shit. Well, I wish I could take that back, you know, but.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you got to trust your parents, not the priest. You know, you barely know him.
Yeah. I don't know, but you're led to believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have the Catholic environment, but it was, you know, it was like, I call it general Christian, or vanilla Christian.
All right.
You know, and there was a lot of just kind of, I don't know. Being raised in that environment, it was very weird and interesting, and I believed it for a while, but then I realized I was kind of only believing it because, you know, the people around me believed it, and that makes sense, and it's understandable.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I always think this is total random, but I always think of there's a Simpsons episode where Flanders is talking about church, and he's sort of flummoxed and sort of caught off guard by the fact there's electric guitars in church now. And he's like, electric guitars in church? And it just makes me think of like my childhood and this sort of like cool, you know, hip, like churchy youth pastor who's like, yeah, I'm going to be cool and hip and try to reach my flock with electric, I can't say that word, electric guitars. You know, it's like a funny memory I have. Anyways.
Cool. Do you remember your first time?
I kind of don't, to be honest with you. Took me,
okay.
I think I was in my early 20s. Took me a long time. Mm-hmm. And, I might have been under the influence of alcohol. So I don't really remember. How about you?
Oh yeah, I do remember. It was weird. I remember it being very strange.
Yeah.
I was 15. And this was also the girl's first time, and I remember it hurt.
Huh.
You know, and so it was a very we didn't finish because it just hurt too much, you know. But I remember her being kind of proud of the fact that we had kind of gotten farther than we had normally gotten, you know. And so it was just I still remember. I wouldn't say it was a traumatizing experience, but it was something that I hadn't touched on with my parents. The fact that there might be pain.
Oh, I see.
I remember that clearly, that I was like, oh shit, you know, because when you watch movies, everyone seems to be having a grand old time.
Yeah.
And then when you translate that into real life, you're like, oh my God, this is like, there's no music. The lights are on sometimes. People are a little bit weird. This is uncomfortable. And she doesn't seem to be making the same faces. Why isn't the hair whipping back? I have no idea what's going on. And I watched too many movies as a kid, so I walked into this thinking like, oh, this is what it's going to look like. Nope.
Yeah.
There's pain, there's a bit of whining. I don't remember her crying, but I remember her being kind of very nervous. I was nervous as well, and so it's a very, very awkward first experience.
And that's probably the case for most everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say 90% of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
well, Jason, I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Cool, man.
Thanks for sharing with me, and I'd be happy to have you back for another episode anytime.
Anytime. Like I said, I always like talking to you, Knowns.
Yeah.
Knowns Wells.
Knowns Wells. Do you want to plug anything?
Say hi to my mom. No. No. I mean, I co-host the Atlantic Screen Connection podcast. It's a movie podcast about films. And we go in depth. We've been kind of on and off lately, just taking it easy. I've been grading papers and whatnot. So there's a new episode going to be coming out soon. We're thinking about doing Jurassic Park. And that's it. We've just hit 10,000 downloads. So we're kind of thrilled about that.
Congrats.
Yeah. And so, it's a really, really fun little milestone. And summer's coming. I'm really happy. I'll be able to work out a little bit more. But no, that's it. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Jason B. Michael. On Instagram, same thing, Jason B. Michael. So
cool.
Thanks again for having me, man. I always love chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
All right,
back to grading papers.
Have fun. So let's just get into it. I'm not going to do really an intro. Let's talk about it. I want to explore the birds and the bees and that sort of impact. I talked with my friend Jessica in a other segment of this episode, and her and I were very similar in that we never had that conversation with our parents, and we explored sort of the impact of that. But I'm curious about your story and your experience with that conversation.
Yeah. It was more, we never seemed to really have a direct conversation. There was some bits and pieces of advice kind of later on. Not all of it was that great. My mom was before she met my dad and had kids, she was a Catholic nun. And my dad was the first person she met, the first person she ever dated, I should say. Not first person she met, but the first person she dated, and was pretty much her only boyfriend, until she got married and had us, my sister and my brother and me. She always told us, I remember, I don't want to speak for my siblings, but for me, I think she knew that, there was curiosity as we're getting older, and she would always say, I'm gonna have to have that conversation with you. And she never really did. I got some of the scientific, factual stuff. Even though I went to Catholic school, they would still give you some basics, like, this is, the cross section of the uterus, or a little bit on the male side.
You're getting the biology.
Yes, into the biology, yeah.
Yeah.
And, as far as things are going to go through when you hit puberty, and feelings and changes, and how you relate to people, and dating later on and all that really never really took place. I was curious about a lot of things, and I would just, and I felt, I don't remember processing like I can't ask. I just didn't even think to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just being really curious about things. And I would go into like, it was sort of like a kind of stumbling, like being nosy. I would go into my mom's stuff and I would find her books, her adult novels, nothing really crazy or anything, but some of them had being adult novels have adult material in them. And I had a kind of my reading comprehension as a younger kid was kind of advanced, and I somehow knew how to skim and get to the good parts.
What were these novels? I mean, are we talking about like general contemporary fiction or like romance literature?
A little bit of both. I remember D.H. Lawrence.
Oh yeah.
And Women in Love.
Uh-huh.
I remember that. And I remember being intrigued by some of it, but some of the stuff I could not quite figure out. Like the way there's certain phrases for certain sexual acts, but I didn't like a euphemism, and I didn't quite get what they would mean.
Right.
But
how old were you at that point?
Oh, about, I don't know, 7 or 8.
And I actually before we resume, I since this is sort of a different structure of the normal episodes, I didn't even introduce you. And I also guiltily don't know how to pronounce your first name.
It's Jeanne.
Jeanne, okay.
Just Jeanne. Yeah, it looks like it looks like Janine but it's Jeanne. And yours is it's known, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Correct. Okay, yeah. I think I remember you mentioning that too. So
yeah. Jeanne, I'm sorry.
No,
but
that's fine.
Thanks for doing this. I
Sure.
appreciate it. So, at what age were you reading D.H. Lawrence?
About 7.
Oh my
8.
gosh!
I was looking, not reading it, not like reading it. Just
You're precocious. You were skimming and trying to
looking for the good parts. The thing is, pick up. If there's a page with the word breast on it, that's
Sure.
that's a good one to start perusing.
Sure. So, was your mom always a Catholic nun?
She was a Catholic nun from a teenager, from like 18 years old, until she was about 30. I think she was making efforts to leave, I think in her late 20s, but she could have just left, but they want you to go through these different steps and live in a halfway house and try to just really make sure. I guess it's a good idea to make sure this is really what you're doing. You're not just being reactive. And she did the whole thing exactly as they asked. So she'd be on good terms with the church. So then she left. By the time she was about 30, 31, she was out.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to be flighty like that Maria.
Oh, no. I used to think... Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, it was just a funny little aside. Like she would always get annoyed with the way nuns were depicted in Hollywood, and like starting with one of the things I remember when I was a little kid. I thought when you were a nun that means you got to fly around on those those cool headpieces. Because there was a TV show called The Flying Nun, and so when she said I used to be a nun, that's what I thought she got to do. I thought that meant she got to totally fly all over the place. So I thought that was like so cool. And she was like, "No, I don't fly. I never flew."
Yeah, that's a lot more exciting vision of nunnery than.
Yeah.
At what age did she have you?
She was in her late 30s.
Okay, so this is
mid to late 30s, which was considered pretty old for the era, because this is like I was born in 1969.
Gotcha.
She had us kind of late comparatively to other. I mean, now that would be considered probably just about average now.
And was it a Catholic household even after she left the nunnery?
It was. It was not a devout Catholic house. My dad would show more, would give more lip service to he'd give more lip service to it in church and all that. But my mom kind of she kept the relationship with it, but it was always a little bit with an eye roll. And she really didn't have patience for ceremony after that. She didn't like any kind of drawn out ceremonial anything, because that was where she did a lot of that in her day, and she really just didn't have much patience for that.
Gotcha.
I think she felt like, well, my dad was a Catholic, and she, and at the time it was probably considered, you have to have some sort of spiritual guidance for your kids. So she had us go to we went to Catholic school, and until like I think I got terrorized by one of the nuns. One of the nuns just really snapped. The kind of last of the old school nuns, the ones that are really like you hear stories of scary nuns.
Yeah.
We had a couple of those, and one of them really snapped at us on the last day of school. And I was a quiet kid. I wouldn't peep, and they still managed to scream at me and my classmates for something. And I remember being just really upset. And my mom's like, I came home like crying, and my mom said, "I'm done. So she took us out. We did go to, we went from Catholic to public school, and then we would do night, once a week, I think we did CCD classes, which is like kind of a night Catholic Catholic.
Yeah,
Catholic
I've heard
school
of them.
classes. Yeah. So we would do that until I think, I don't know, 6th or 7th grade. And I just stopped going to church. I would I just didn't have to, I just decided I didn't believe in any of it. And I would just conveniently get a stomach ache on Sunday Mass. And I would just say, yeah, I'm going to be out. I'll be out. And I would just not come out of the bathroom. And I'm just like, oh.
That's a
Sorry.
good one. The stomach ache, I think, is a good choice because it's hard to test.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So you said you got a sort of basic kind of, factual, scientific explanation of the birds and the bees, and
Yes.
that's about it?
That's about it. And the rest I kind of had to kind of figure it out, search and find. Like, as I said, reading books. I remember just reading books. I get more about what people are actually doing, but you still get kind of a skewed view depending on what you're reading.
Sure.
I do remember there was a book that I remember being strange. It was really intrigued with, and it was way above and beyond what I should have been reading at that time. And I didn't, and I know I didn't get all of it, but I remember there was just a lot emotionally. It drew me in a lot, and it was also there was just one scene in the very thick book that was very explicit, and I remember being really, really intrigued with that. But it was a book by I think her name Marilyn French, The Women's Room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it kind of influenced me going forward in my life. I think I reread it again when I was in my late teens, and I read it again in my early 30s, and then getting a lot more out of it. I should probably pick it up again.
So it sounds like you got a lot of education through books. Was there any other sort of sources where you kind of learned what it was all about?
Well, probably. I remember when you're just in kind of being a very curious young teenager, just sneaking down to the cable box. And I don't know how old you are, if you had the old-fashioned cable box with the dial. And I think
I'm 36, but I grew up with no TV whatsoever.
Okay. Well, we had this old-fashioned cable box, and certain people my age, I'm almost 50. There was the sneaking and looking for the adult channels if you played with a little dial and you could get the wavy line, sometimes you could see a lot like in black and you could see like a basically black and white softcore porn.
Sure. Yeah, I've heard of this. I've heard of this mystery.
And then sometimes it'd be the wavy lines, but every now and then you'd hit gold, and it would just be basically black and white, and just being very, very intrigued. Usually, like pretty late at night, and I have to listen for footsteps and stuff like that. So, yeah, that too.
Well, these are, books, softcore porn. These are sort of hyperbolic, sort of romanticized versions of this sort of natural biological thing that we all experience.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. How did learning through those, gosh, my throat, I have a tickle. How did learning through those sort of avenues impact your own sort of sexual experiences, if you're open to talking about that?
It seemed a lot more dramatic, a lot more of this barrier you have to like fight through, I guess, to get to the, in terms of I guess that's more with the books. The movies were more about more explicit mechanics and just because it's intriguing to watch as a whatever age. So I didn't really get. I just kind of like got an idea of how they interact more, to how bodies come together more, I suppose. But it was, I didn't have a whole lot of real, real field experience to kind of test that, and. I didn't, I know with a lot of kids, maybe in their teens, they start dating, and they might have a boyfriend or girlfriend or special friend that they start exploring with, and I didn't really have that. I remember just not being into my classmates, male, female, anyone. I knew I liked guys, but I just couldn't seem to put that into any kind of, I couldn't make that connection.
I can relate to that.
I think we were just,
You mentioned, you were a quieter kid, and I can relate to that. I didn't, to make you feel a little less alone. In high school, I was very quiet, didn't really have any experiences like that. It didn't happen for me until I was in my 20s. And because I was raised in an environment where, I was taught sex before marriage was a sin, masturbation, I'd be going to hell for eternity. Like, these are the things that I was taught and sort of grew up with. And, there was always a lot of discomfort around the idea of sex and masturbation and all these things, and then guilt and shame as well that came. It's only like it took me a long time, like even probably 10 years to like get to a somewhat healthy place in terms of like sex. I wonder if you can relate to that any at all.
Yeah, I can. I just had a flash when you. I'm just trying to compose my thoughts here.
Sure.
One of the things with the shame and guilt, I remember buying, because at the time there wasn't any kind of age. In fact, I still don't think there was any age restriction. Like buying a Cosmopolitan magazine, and I was pretty young. I was about 11, and it was they had this whole section on self-pleasure and different things like that, and it was just very explicit, and it was educational, actually. And I remember my mom finding it, and I didn't hide it too much because it just looked like like a fashion mag.
Yeah.
And but she did somehow pick it up and peruse it, and she's like, "This is way too mature for you." And I don't, and I got to have a talk with you, and like kind of in this sort of annoyed way.
Mm-hmm.
I got to have and then the talk never happened, and she got rid. I don't know. She just tossed the magazine, and I was just there's a slight vague sense that like she kind of hinted that I was being precocious, and I. The thing, it's so funny because I was such a, like, I kept to myself so much. I mean, I was curious. I was, I wanted, I looked for things. I also knew when to not ask her. Certain things I just didn't even think to ask her. I would just go and try to just find it out on my own or read about it or whatever. And, that I got to have a talk with you, because some of the things she sometimes she'd find her books messed with or whatever, and
but she's reading D.H. Lawrence. She has to be a little bit progressive.
I know. Well, that's the thing. It's just like I just don't know if she knew how to handle that with kids.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, there's a good idea. Yeah, you do need to talk with me. It was like, there's no argument there, but it was like, but there's always seemed to be a little squeamishness about it. I don't think I think after she kind of was several years in with my dad, I don't think she was in a particularly happy marriage, but, she endured it for just stability.
I see.
And I don't think she ever. I'm not. Well, I don't want to out too much about. I should be. I want to take it from my point of view, but
sure.
I don't know how happy she was, and how comfortable she was. I kind of had a stumble. I didn't date in college. It was an all women's college, and I was really immersed in my work. And I still had curiosity, but it just, it just sublimated into my work. And it wasn't until I got out of college, I just started, hanging out with some friends I knew from back in high school, and then meeting people. And then there was a kind of a little I lived in Philadelphia, and there was a little Philly scene I hung out with for a while, and a lot of trial and error, and I just didn't. Some of the basic, just certain things. It's not even about like real, the really intimate sexual details or anything, but just about like what to expect, from what's reasonable to expect from a partner, whether it's short term or long term, and just about, basic empathy and kindness. I didn't really know what was acceptable and what was just being a guy, and I couldn't get that information from my mom because she didn't know.
Sure.
And if I asked anything, certain things, she'd be like, well, what do you want to do something like that for? Like, ugh, and so I just don't, she just wasn't real happy in that.
She didn't give you much.
No, and I just I trial and errored a lot, and hell, I'm still trial and erroring it, but I wish I could go back and I wish I could go back in time and have a talk with myself back then, and be like, hey, don't tolerate that, or don't, that's not cool, or that kind of thing.
What do you think is, I'm not a parent. Are you? Do you have kids? No,
I don't.
So we are clearly very qualified to talk about parenting.
Oh no, I think we hey, if you've had a parent.
Well, I was making a joke, but I think
I know.
I think I'm curious about like what your thoughts are on like when to have it and how to have those conversations with your kids, because I was talking to Elizabeth Lame, on an episode of this show, and we were talking about the topic was dealing with grief as a parent, and how do you relay your grief to your children, and at what age and in what way, and we came to the conclusion that it's every child is different, and how you do it has to be kind of different, and there's a sort of very fine balance. Do you think there's probably a similar sort of situation here when we're talking about having that conversation, the birds and the bees conversation with children?
I think you should watch and take. I mean, use it for there's some guidelines of just about the age of and what the questions they're asking, or if they're starting to talk about certain things. Take their lead from there and see if they might not have a question right ready for you, but they might bring up a topic, open it up. A question might come from that, and answer as they ask, and at certain ages maybe just a few some things for the the more on the biology side, and when they start, going out with their friend, when they're transitioning from just hanging out with their same-sex friends to like groups of, mixed friends, keeping an open a dialogue with them, seeing what, if they, offering certain safety safety advice, make sure as they are getting into the upper teens, knowing about birth control. And then on the emotional side, offering what, well, I guess, as I said, that depends on the experience you've had. I mean, if you've had nothing but really negative experiences, it's, I wouldn't want to.
It's difficult.
It's difficult. Yeah. It's, I think you could, it could be useful in terms of, things to keep yourself safe, emotionally safe, physically safe. There may be a friend of yours that you trust, who your child trusts possibly, or if their child knows another adult who you trust, might be able to have a conversation. Yeah. I don't know if you have to actually, facilitate that. That might be something your child would do anyway.
I think that's all good. I think that those are all good tips. I would say like the overarching thing would be, on the emotional side, just be open and honest with the people in your life, and that includes your kids, and also like sex and mental health and like all these things are like huge complex ideas and things that we experience, and we all experience it differently, and we all we're all still learning and sort of coping with it and figuring it out, and so I think like always coming from a place of like empathy and understanding that like, hey, I'm with you. I had to go through this myself. There's no shame. There's no guilt. It's a natural thing. I'm here with you emotionally, whatever, like all those things I think are sort of a good approach to really any conversation that we have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a niece, and I'm hoping as she's getting into the age where she dates, it's like the one thing. I mean, I'm sure her mom's got a good handle on it, but if they got a conversation, she might be going to college in my area at some point, and I'd just like to tell her no matter what, whether male, female, whether it's, a long-term relationship, short-term, or, the weekend or whatever, when that time comes, just like, that you're dealing with someone who's really a kind person. I mean, because I know people, are at different stages of their life and they can't always be committed, and that's not always necessary.
Right.
I don't believe in, the forever and ever for everyone, but I stumbled a lot in my 20s dealing with like some really, really unsavory characters, and and even into my and even into my 30s, and it was really kind of traumatic and off-putting. And I remember like having long stretches of just being, I didn't have the words for. I mean, traumatized sounds too. That sounds like someone who's been involved with something that was violent, but just there's just certain things that are just not acceptable to. Not acceptable from in an intimate relationship.
Right. Yeah. I think you don't have to get into it, but I will say this. Even if there wasn't violence or whatever, like you can still feel and experience trauma, right? That's a valid experience you have. I say this on the show a lot, but I'm always reminded of it, and I was still continue to be reading this book called "The Body Keeps the Score," which is amazing. Yeah, it's about how we hold trauma in our bodies, and there's a section he's talking about memory and how when it pertains to sort of childhood or just trauma in general, our memories is especially fallible. But the point he makes is that the emotional experience that we have is valid, and that experience is what we had, and that's the thing we should focus on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you had those experiences. That's always tough.
No, it's okay. I mean, we're, I'm in how to put it? It's I feel more comfortable with myself on my own. So, I mean, I never really wasn't, but I'm just at the point where I'm more accepting that if I am alone, I'm alone, and I'm not going to tolerate certain things or certain behavior just because the alternative is you're alone, because you're even more alone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful thing. You're performing self-care and self-love and creating solid boundaries for yourself because you know who you are and you know what you don't want in your life. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate you, Jeanne, for coming on to You, Me, Empathy. I want to talk a little bit before we go about what I know you work in the sort of art and media space, and I'm very intrigued, and I want to hear a little bit about what you're doing. I'm curious, if you don't mind talking about it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, my background's in painting. That was what I studied in college. And then I have had in my 20s, all in and out, working on mostly painting, oil painting. And I have like two bodies of work, work from direct observation, literally like either self-portraiture or portraiture of other people, directly in, like, not from a photo, just like in a space, or still life or landscape, like on site. And then I would have these, like, for the lack of a better word, it feels a little airy-fairy, but like dreamscape, where it's a sort of stream of consciousness kind of drawings. And in my I also learned a little bit about animation in college, just a little bit, in an elective. And I always wanted to do more, but I didn't have the access to the technology. And let's see, it's been almost 10 years. When I was living in Austin, Texas, I met up with a distant cousin and his band, and one of the girls in the band became a really close friend of mine. And they wanted, I was going to draw some freeform imagery to their, to an album that they were putting out. And the my cousin called me up and said, "Hey, would you mind do you want to do just make a video, make an animation?" And I said, I would love to. I had Photoshop at this point. I had learned about Photoshop at a previous job, and I was like, I'll try. I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, it's fine. You just do whatever you want. And I did, and it really kind of rejuvenated my interest in just all the visual art, all aspects of it. So I made this totally freeform thing for this band called The Boxing Lesson called One, and it just started off as a drawing, and I had the drawing itself, and it turns into, and then it turned into a ghost, and then a ghost going through this journey, and then cats in a cardboard spaceship. It just was really fun.
Yeah.
And then I followed it up with another one where they said, do whatever you want, but could you make it really racy? Could you make it really make it X-rated if you can?
Yeah. And
I made it almost X-rated, but I couldn't quite go all the way there because it actually was too distracting versus
sure.
So I did the follow-up to it called 4, and then I met David Huntsberger, being a fan of Professor Blastoff, and one time got in touch with him when he was asking for artists for different for a project he was doing, and from there I was doing all kinds of little mini projects or longer projects, and so I've been bouncing off of his work for quite a bit. And
did you do some stuff for One-Headed Beast?
Yes, I did.
That's cool.
Yeah, I did the one that diagnosis depression. It's the one where there's like a doctor's face eclipsing the sun, and there's and there's a cat hanging off a tree, and the joke of the hanging their baby, but then the cat just drops into an abyss.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
Yeah, and then and I finished. There's this lot. I wanted to get better at the animation, and I didn't want to rush it because, usually you're doing a project, there's a deadline, and there's certain points where you have to just compromise. Well, that's going to be good enough.
Yeah.
And I just want something I could just really just sink into for a while. And I'm a fan of this musician named Jim White. And after one of his shows, I asked him if I could animate this song. It's this funny little bluegrass song called Paranormal Girlfriend.
Okay.
And it's a very upbeat song, but it's about bad juju between lovers.
Uh-huh.
And I thought about expanding that into a broader story, not about just about an acrimonious relationship, but about opposites coming together, and about matter and antimatter from a quantum level, from a very small level to a universe, to parallel universes coming together and attracting and blowing each other out.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be out soonish. I just got to. There's just I showed a version of it at David Huntsberger's junk show.
Nice.
And he helped out with it. There's a certain point where I used myself for the male character for a lot of it, because it's just, I tried to ask some guys if they would do it, and they always got self-conscious, and it's it's not going to be like that. I can change your features. I just need a male body.
Yeah. For
certain, and I just couldn't get anyone to cooperate, so I just did it myself and masculinized my features. But there's a part where there's this end scene where this couple come together and kiss, and I'm I am not going to inhabit that. That's too isolated. That's ridiculous. But I asked David if he would he and his girlfriend, if they could just come together real quick and for the last scene. So they're both the universe, the male and the female universe.
Cool.
And that was really cool. So yeah, you'll see it soon. I'm excited about it. And then I have an idea I'm going to be doing that I think is going to be multimedia. drawing, painting, animation, and it might take several years to do, just like this past animation, but it's going to be broader. And I want to, at the animation part, I want to incorporate like 3D and hand drawn and all kinds of stuff. I want it to be longer. It's this idea I have of, I'll just say it's about a spore, and I'll just leave it at that. And but there's going to be other aspects of it that going to incorporate different media, and I'm just going to take my time with it. I got a good job. Well, I got a job I enjoy, so I don't have to depend on, I don't have to depend on getting this done by a certain deadline, so
Sure.
I can sell something or not sell something.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
yeah.
Where can people see some of your work? Do you have a website?
Yes, I've been redesigning my website, but but you can still get a pretty good look around. JeanneHospod.com. That's JeanneHospod.com. That's the website. The blog, which you can get more of a chronological sense, and I talk about the process or what's going on in my mind or where I'm at. And that's JeanneHospod.blogspot.com.
Cool. Well, for this show, for this episode, I'll make sure to include all those links in the show notes. But
okay.
Thanks for talking about the birds and the bees and sexuality and art. We covered the gamut.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you and appreciate what you do, and I think that will be the end of that segment.